much for joining us on this Thanksgiving weekend. We hope you've had a fantastic few days now with your family and friends, and we start on this Sunday focused on the nation's capital. Just ahead of the holiday weekend, Indiana Democrat Andre Carson announced a bill that would ban the U.S. government from creating religious-based registries, a specific reaction to reports that a Trump administration might implement a Muslim registry. And let's welcome in Democratic Congressman Andre Carson. Now, Congressman Carson, great to see you again. Thanks for coming back. Absolutely. Congratulations on being reelected, of course, and a happy belated Thanksgiving to you and your family.
Thank you.
Let's talk about Donald Trump to begin. You were outspoken against him, of course, during the campaign. Has he done anything since his election to assuage your fears at all?
Not yet. I'm hopeful, but I'm very cautious. I'm suspicious and ever critical. I met Mr. Trump. I found him personally to be very personal and gregarious, but I've been very critical and suspicious of his picks. You look at General Flynn, you look at Bannon, you look at so many other people. It's cause for legitimate concern.
You joined fellow Democratic congressmen and women in asking for him to rescind his appointment of Stephen Bannon as strategist. You say you don't want him in the White House. He has come out and said that he's not a white nationalist, but an economic nationalist, and ties to the alt-right have been overblown. But you still don't want him to have that position.
I think this terminology, alt-right, and these other phrases are different ways to talk about white nationalistic views. On his website, there have been anti-Semitic things, anti-black things, anti-Latinos things, anti-immigrant things, anti-LGBT things that have been said and very hurtful. And so he's yet to account for the things that have been said on Breitbart. Of course, they disparage me. But I'm curious as to why Donald Trump is dog whistling to the darker elements of our society and why he is still trying to solidify his base now that he's in the White House.
Over the past couple of weeks, we've seen a lot of people in and out of Trump Tower as he continues to put his administration together. If he were to invite you to Trump Tower to talk about being a Muslim, there are more than 3 million Muslims in America right now. If he were to talk about that religion with you, would you accept that invitation? What would you want to talk to him about?
I've met him before, and we had a great conversation about his business dealings in Indiana. He introduced me to his children, Ivanka and his other sons. And, you know, I found his personality and his personal persona to betray his public rhetoric, which brings into question how Machiavellian is he? How serious is he? How much of what he projects is a part of his constitution and who he really is? His picks concern me when I look at a General Flynn who has stated that the entire religion of Islam is worthy of suspicion. A general who knows better, a general that I've interacted with during my time on the Armed Services Committee, someone whose candor I appreciate, but I've been critical of his remarks. Steve Bannon is another person who I've been very critical of. And so these appointees and these appointments, for me, don't reflect the kind of America that I'm trying to make better myself.
Right and wrong, correct and incorrect. Muslims definitely in the spotlight over the past year. For those that are watching this morning that still have questions about it, those that hear this rhetoric, what do you want them to know about being a Muslim in America?
Well, while Muslims are monotheistic, we are not a monolith. There are Muslims who are more progressive, there are Muslims who are more conservative. There are over 1 billion Muslims, so obviously not all Muslims think the same. Muslims have been a part of this country since the inception of this country and arguably before this country. Our economy improved significantly. That was in part due to the scores of Muslim businessmen and women who have helped put Americans back to work. And our intelligence services. I was one of those Muslims working in law enforcement, helping to keep our community safer. I work for the Indiana Department of Homeland Security. There are Muslims across the country who work in our intelligence services who are helping to keep Americans safe, and you'll never hear these great stories.
Let's talk about the future of the Democratic Party right now. Your thoughts on Representative Keith Ellison. Would you like to see him head up the party?
Keith Ellison is a good friend of mine. I think he represents progressive ideals. I've been supportive of his candidacy. He's a Midwesterner like me. He understands Rust Belt issues. He understands the issues that impact people in rural communities and urban centers. I think he'd be fantastic as a leader.
President Barack Obama, Vice President Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, many of them essentially the face of the Democratic Party, especially over the past couple of years. A year from now, who's the face of the Democratic Party on the national level?
It's hard to say. I think that the party has to recalibrate. We have to incorporate more religious minorities. We have to incorporate more African Americans, Latinos, women, brothers and sisters from the LGBT community, and really change our strategy, change our paradigm, look at focusing more on cities, towns, local municipalities, and building from the ground up.
As you watched results on election night, your thoughts about the Democratic Party. Did Hillary Clinton run the campaign she should have run? Did Democrats run the campaigns that they should have run? Was this a long-term setback for the Democrats, or simply a short-term roadblock?
I think Secretary Clinton did a phenomenal job. I think she was met with, unfortunately, a great deal of sexism in our society from women as well.
Let's talk about Indiana Democrats now. Not a huge night for them, election-wise, on election night. Your thoughts on the Indiana Democratic Party? What have they done right? What have they done wrong?
I was shocked by our tremendous losses. We had great candidates. We had John Gregg. We had Aaron Dondo. We had so many great people running for office. Christina Hale, I was excited about her. Of course, Evan Bayh, a good friend of mine. I think that Chairman John Zodi has done a fantastic job of our state party. I think that Chairman Joe Miller has done a great job as well, the chair of our county party. I think what we're seeing, though, is a fire that has been lit by Donald Trump of wanting to take America back to this mythological Camelot that never existed. And that kind of fire calls more people to come out and want to make America great again. They've been disaffected, they're disillusioned, and they're hurt by politicians.
To that end, you and Senator Joe Donnelly, obviously...
And Pete Visclosky.
And Pete Visclosky, major representatives of the Democratic Party here in Indiana. Are you going to be out and about more? Do you have more work to do campaigning, not just for your position, but for the party as a whole?
There's always more work to do. I'm here to help our team, Team Carson. We're working with other candidates. We're trying to recruit more candidates, bring different faces to the party. I'm always working. I never give up. There's an old proverb that says, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. So we're chopping wood and carrying water.
Chop that wood, carry water.
Yes,
Congressman
sir.
Carson, great to see you. Now to the State House, the Indiana lawmaker proposing a total ban on abortion says it's an issue that should be left up to the states. But a key legislative leader and member of his own party is indicating he's not interested in visiting that issue. Our TV6 State House reporter Katie Hines brings us details from her conversation with State Rep Kurt Nisley.
State Representative Kurt Nisley says the U.S. Supreme Court doesn't have jurisdiction when it comes to abortion.
It's been many years since we've addressed that. And science has moved a long way since the last time this was addressed. And so it's time to allow the laws to catch up with our scientific knowledge of when life begins.
In a one-on-one conversation at the State House, Nisley tells me the Supreme Court got it wrong with Roe versus Wade, and he thinks now is a great time to bring the proposal to the floor. He says the timing with the new administration elected to the White House and at the State House has nothing to do with it, saying this has been planned for a while.
When I ran for office, this was the #1 issue, and I was very clear that this is what I wanted to do. So I'm pretty sure the people back home were very well aware of that. And from the feedback I've been getting from back home, they're definitely excited about this one.
House Speaker Brian Bosma says he doesn't know if there's support for the proposal within the Republican caucus, and he hasn't formed a final opinion himself.
I don't think we should buy a lawsuit personally. I don't think we're in the business of getting way ahead of the curve so that we can be a test case that's going to cost the state money. I very much so understand the approach of those who advocate it. It's been tested and not been effective elsewhere. I'm not sure the Supreme Court there's enough change with one justice in the Supreme Court to change that.
Bosma also stated earlier in the week his commitment is to not get distracted by social issues in the next session. State lawmakers are scheduled to get back to work for the long budget session after the first of the year. Back to you.
Back to Indianapolis this week. The battle to stop racist school bullying is behind a new campaign to get the attention of the incoming White House. Stand for Children is asking Hoosier parents to demand the new administration further renounce racial, religious, and homophobic slurs which are causing problems in schools. The group has started an online petition that it hopes people will sign and deliver a strong message to the president-elect and vice president-elect as well. Rafael Sanchez is with the executive director of Stand for Children Indiana.
Joining us now, Justin Ohlmiller with Stand for Children here in Indianapolis. Welcome to the program.
Yeah, good to be here, Rafael.
You sent a letter, in fact, you hand-delivered it to the Vice President-elect, asking him for help and to stop the bullying in schools. What's this about?
Well, we've seen an uptick in incidents in schools, including here in Indiana, where students have been targeted. Students of color have been targeted in incidents of bullying and intimidation. And so we really want the governor and our new Vice President-elect to stand up against that and really repudiate that sort of behavior.
And we talk about stop bullying. What exactly are we seeing not only in Indiana, but you have cases around the country. So what are you talking about specifically?
Well, the Southern Poverty Law Center has been keeping track of this since the election. 167 incidents since the election of bigotry or acts of hate in schools. Incidents where kids, including in Columbus, Indiana, where a Latino child was targeted with chants of build that wall. Also situations where swastikas have appeared in bathrooms in other parts of our country. So these are incidents that really are targeting children, and it comes really out of the rhetoric that we've seen in the campaign. And so we really need to just come together and frankly rely on our leaders like Vice President-elect Mike Pence to really repudiate that sort of behavior. I should put out that your group, Stand for Children, works for reforms in public school education. You have worked with the governor on some reform initiatives. So how do you make this request not sound political? Sure. Because they may take it as a group that's insinuating that it is the fault of the president-elect and the VP-elect, sure, that they're behind some of these statements. Yeah. No, it's definitely not a partisan activity. My organization is nonpartisan, and we have worked directly with the Vice President-elect Pence on issues of school reform, including a bill that's actually making enormous opportunities for kids in IPS schools right here. So we appreciate some of the work that our governor have done on education issues, and now we really want him to stand up and speak out against some of these issues of discrimination in our schools. Do you want speeches? Do you want public service announcements? What is it you want Mr. Trump and Mr. Pence to do specifically? Well, I think the governor needs to be sort of authentic in how he would respond. But I will say this: if he could come out and, in the strongest possible terms, speak out against these issues in our schools and really try to bring people together. I think initially even meeting with the students in Columbus, Indiana, and talking with that father who was really hurt by that incident that happened a week and a half ago. I think those are good starting points. What I will say is I was pleased and proud enough to work for former Mayor Bart Peterson, and after 9/11, within days, he stood up in the circle after a lot of reported incidents of hatred towards people of Middle Eastern descent, and gave a resounding speech really denouncing that. And so I think our governor and Vice President-elect Mike Pence has a great opportunity to stand up. He's a family man. He understands that all our schools should be a safe haven, and we think that just standing up and speaking out in the strongest possible terms is an opportunity for him that we frankly all need at this time in our country. Are they responsible, though, for some of the words that we're hearing in schools, in public places? Are they behind that? I mean, do we put the blame on them or their campaign for that? Or what happened that led to this sort of tone in our country? Well, I think that some of the campaign rhetoric certainly sparked some of these incidents. And like I said, we've seen these incidents grow. The Southern Poverty Law Center has been keeping track of that. With that being said, we're not trying to place the blame on our Vice President-elect. What we are doing is saying that as the second biggest megaphone in our country right now, as our Vice President-elect, he has an opportunity and I think a responsibility to stand up and really ensure that all Hoosier children of all backgrounds have a safe place in school. Have you heard back from the office yet, or are you hoping to hear back soon? Not yet. We hope to. And like we said, we're tracking, the statements being made by our governor and Vice President-elect Mike Pence, and we hope that he'll stand up and address this call for denouncing these acts of hate and intimidation. And Justin, what could other people do, right? Because at the end of the day, two people, whether they're the president or the vice president, can't do it all alone. So when people hear these kinds of comments, what should they be doing? What can other people do to help empower children or adults not to go down that road? Yeah, well, I think it does begin at home, and so I think that we as parents should really be talking to our kids about being kind to others, regardless of their political affiliation, and certainly people of all backgrounds. And so I think it really begins at home, and really trying to know that we're at a tough time in our country, that we're coming together after an election. And so I think that parents have that responsibility, but also school officials do. And from what I've seen, there's been great leadership from our superintendents and our principals when these incidents have taken place, at least in Indiana. They've come out in the strongest possible terms, sent letters home, and really tried to ensure families were aware of those things. So I think it's really important that our local leadership in our schools show responsibility and encourage others to stand up, and they have thus far. And I think that we should all be proud of that as Hoosiers, but we also want our governor to do the same. Justin Ohlmiller, Stand for Children, thank you so much. We appreciate your time. Thank you, Raphael.
Come back to Indianapolis this week. We are joined by two of our favorite political insiders, Laura Beck for the Democrats and Marcus Barlow for the Republicans. And guys, this is exciting. I brought a ton of no, I didn't. No leftovers. We're done. We're done with the turkey and stuff.
I don't think I could eat anymore.
Let's look ahead ahead to 2017, of course, and let's start by talking about Governor-elect Eric Holcomb now. What do you expect out of the governor's office when he moves in January? Marcus?
You know, I expect, in a lot of ways, more of the same. I expect there to still be the fiscal discipline that we've seen from Republican leadership, from Daniels through Pence. I expect him to also at the same time want to put his mark on state government. I think that they talked about how they're doing it. They're doing their own evaluation of just how state government's working, what employees are necessary, what employees aren't necessary.
More Mike Pence, more Mitch Daniels, though.
You know, I don't think he has to choose. I think it's going to be Eric Holcomb. And I know that sounds cheesy, but really there are a lot of similarities between the Daniels era and the Mike Pence era. And I think that he'll keep those similarities while still adding some of his own initiatives as well.
Take me behind the walls inside the State House right now for Democrats. Are they more excited about working with Eric Holcomb than they had been about Mike Pence?
Well, I think that one of the challenges that Governor-elect Holcomb is going to have, and an opportunity, is he really has an opportunity to distinguish himself from fighting the cultural and social conservative wars. You know, he came up through that when he worked for John Hostetler. I mean, he was pretty much known as a cultural warrior, especially in the House of Representatives, and he was Mike Pence's lieutenant governor. But he really has an opportunity, as he has said, he wants to reach out to Democrats. He wants to work with them. There weren't any Democrats on the transition and agency evaluation, which was a little disappointing. But I think the Democrats probably are looking at all of the different opportunities they have to move the state forward. But it does open up a window for us when everyone starts shifting to fighting about the culture, to abortion, and to all of these other issues, and to RFRA.
Right.
But at the same time, you have to remember, though, that during session, the speaker's a pretty powerful guy. So that's also going to set the tone, too.
And in all fairness, there is a lot of revisionist history from Democrats about the Daniels era. And sometimes it's funny to me to watch them say, like, oh, be more like Mitch Daniels, having been in the Daniels administration, and watch them attack him constantly as well. I mean, Governor Daniels defunded Planned Parenthood.
Absence makes the heart grow fonder. I mean, what can you say?
I mean, the Daniels era, there was defunding Planned Parenthood. That is what he did as a conservative. I think that Eric Holcomb doesn't have to apologize for being a conservative. He didn't run away from the Pence record. He ran towards it, and Democrats attacked him for it. He still won the election. So I think he does have a bit of a mandate to govern how he wants to, and I think that some of the identity politics that happened during the campaign didn't work for Democrats.
The governor-elect aside, for Speaker Bosma, for lawmakers at the Capitol right now, what are the main Republican goals into 2017, Marcus?
I think that, you know, like I said before, I think that fiscal discipline is going to be job number one for Republicans. There's going to be also, I think, responding a lot to and preparing Indiana for what changes might be happening at the federal level, especially when it comes to how changes in Obamacare are going to affect what we have here with the Healthy Indiana plan. And, you know, some of the talk coming out of the transition really is that the Healthy Indiana plan is going to be much more of a national model for what they want to do as far as consumer-driven healthcare. So it's going to be interesting to see what kind of space the governors have. And Holcomb has said that he feels like he has more freedom to govern in Indiana because he feels like he'll have a better partner in Washington. So it'll be interesting to see how House and Senate Republicans, as well as the governor's office, adapt to what will be a new federal environment.
What about for the Democrats, Laura?
Well, I think what we're going to see is the Democrats are definitely going to be raising the issue of these socially divisive issues. Already we've heard about, you know, Representative Nicely and the total ban on abortion, for example. And
something that Bosma sounds like he doesn't want to address.
Yeah, even Speaker Bosma doesn't appear to have the appetite for that because he went through RFRA, and I think there were a lot of lessons learned from RFRA. So I think there will be that. But at the same time, we're going to be watching at the federal level too, because if federally we gut Medicaid, or if we make drastic changes to education or some of these other issues, that's going to have an impact too. And the other part is, I think too, for the Republicans, you can have your agenda of they want to talk about pre-K. That's great. We've been talking about it for years. We want to make it happen. We've been pushing for it for years. But if they start fighting the culture wars, I don't think it's going to go very well for them, particularly in a lot of the bigger urban centers where we saw the Democrat vote really come out of strong. And with Trump, you just don't know what you're going to get. So Trump might be one way one day, he might be the next one way the next day. And so we have no idea how he's going to govern. And if he governs like how he campaigned, it's going to be a real roller coaster. And so you can't put all your eggs in one basket or another based on what you think Donald Trump's going to do.
As I love to say in television, stay tuned. It keeps people around.
Yeah,
Marcus
yes.
Barlow, Laura Beck, thank you for being here on